Welcome to Faith, Power, and Emancipation, based on this book. And today we are going to look at episode number 8, which focuses on chapter 7, entitled Nonviolent Resistance and the Moral Discipline of Liberation. My name is Professor Januarius Asongu, and I'm the author and your host. And I want to thank you for joining and for continuing this journey with me. Today, we begin part 3 of the book entitled The Ethics of Liberative Resistance. This new section asks a practical and profoundly important question. If oppression must be resisted, how should it be resisted? This is one of the most difficult questions in political theology because history teaches us that even just causes can become morally compromised by the methods they employ. Our first chapter in this section, chapter 7, Nonviolent Resistance and the Moral Discipline of Liberation. One of the greatest misunderstandings about nonviolent resistance is that it is often mistaken for passivity. It is not. Nonviolence is not surrender. It is not cowardice. It is not the refusal to confront evil. On the contrary, genuine nonviolent resistance is one of the most demanding forms of moral courage ever developed. To stand before injustice without hatred, to confront oppression without losing one's humility, to resist violence without becoming violent oneself. These are not acts of weakness, they are acts of extraordinary discipline. The Christian foundation of this discipline is found in the life of Jesus Christ himself. Jesus never accepted injustice. He confronted religious hypocrisy. He challenged political arrogance. He overturned the tables of exploitation in the temple. He exposed the false righteousness of those who use religion to oppress others. Yet, throughout his ministry, he refused to allow hatred to define either his methods or his mission. His goal was never simply to defeat his enemies, his goal was to redeem humanity. This distinction is essential. If the purpose of liberation is merely to defeat an opponent, then almost any method can eventually be justified. But if the purpose of liberation is the restoration of human dignity, then the methods themselves must reflect that human dignity. This is why I argue throughout this chapter that means and ends cannot be separated. A movement that destroys human dignity in the name of human dignity has already contradicted itself. History provides remarkable examples of this principle. Mahatma Gandhi challenged one of the largest empires in history without commanding an army. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. confronted racial segregation not through revenge, but through disciplined moral witness. Nelson Mandela, despite decades in imprisonment, ultimately understood that South Africa's future required reconciliation as well as justice. These leaders differed in important ways, yet they shared a common insight. Power is not exercised only through force, it is also exercised through moral authority. When oppressed communities refuse to surrender, either their dignity or their humanity, they expose the moral bankruptcy of oppression itself. This is precisely why nonviolent resistance has often transformed history in ways that violence could not. Violence may defeat an enemy. Nonviolence has the potential to transform relationships. Now, this does not mean that nonviolence is always easy. Far from it. There are situations in which communities experience extraordinary violence, persecution, and even genocide. These realities raise profoundly difficult ethical questions. My purpose in this chapter is not to offer simplistic answers. Rather, it is to insist that Christians must always begin with a moral presumption in favor of preserving life, protecting human dignity, and avoiding unnecessary violence whenever possible. This reflects the deeper logic of liberative realism. Liberative realism recognizes the reality of oppression. It does not ask people to ignore injustice. It does not preach passive acceptance of tyranny. Instead, it asks a different question. How can resistance remain morally accountable while still confronting evil effectively? That question changes everything. Instead of measuring success only by political victory, liberative realism also measures success by moral integrity. Did the movement preserve truth? Did it protect innocent life? Did it strengthen the institutions necessary for future freedom? Did it cultivate justice rather than revenge? These questions matter because liberation does not end when oppression ends. The society that emerges afterwards will inevitably reflect the moral habits developed during the struggle itself. If a movement becomes accustomed to deception, hatred, and absolute power during resistance, those habits really disappear after victory. They simply become embedded within the new political order. This is why I describe nonviolent resistance as moral discipline. Discipline is not merely self control, it is preparation for the society one hopes to build. Every act of honest, every act of honesty prepares people for democratic life. Every act of forgiveness weakens the cycle of revenge. Every act of courage strengthens the moral foundation of freedom. In this sense, resistance is already a form of nation building. Long before institutions are rebuilt, character is being formed. Long before constitutions are written, habits are being established. Long before elections are held, future leaders are learning how to exercise power. That is why the ethics of resistance can never be treated as secondary. They determine the moral quality of the future society. Ultimately, this chapter reminds us that the struggle for justice is never simply political. It is also spiritual, it is intellectual, it is moral. It asks each of us not only what kind of world we want to create, but also what kind of people we must become in order to create it. That, I believe, is the deepest lesson of nonviolent resistance. It is not merely a strategy, it is a disciplined formation of persons capable of sustaining freedom after liberation has been achieved. Thank you for joining me for this episode 8 of Faith, Power, and Emancipation. In our next episode, we are going to explore chapter 8, David and Goliath Revisited, Intelligence, Strategy, and Moral Asymmetry, where we examine how strategy and moral courage often accomplish what overwhelming force cannot. If you found today's discussion to be helpful, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with others, and leave a comment below. Your support helps bring these conversations on theology, philosophy, and human flourishing to a wider audience. And if you would like to explore these ideas in greater depth, I invite you to purchase a copy of Faith, Power, and Emancipation from Amazon or from my website, asongubooks.com, where you will also find my latest books, articles, podcasts, and other scholarly resources. Until next time, may God bless you, strengthen your commitment to truth, and deepen your pursuit for justice. May He grant you the wisdom to resist evil without ever surrendering your humanity.